Hi everyone, it's Reyes Ramirez here with Fresh Arts. If you haven't been here, if you haven't tuned in before, Fresh Arts is a nonprofit arts organization primarily situated in Houston within the Arts District along Washington Avenue. We provide resources to artists in many different ways, and again, mostly in Houston, but we have a lot of digital online resources like the one you're witnessing today that are available, is open to anyone to use. And so what these are, we have a series of discussions and workshops on Facebook Live and other digital platforms where we have really great discussions on issues or on resources that are particular to artists or creatives working in Houston, but also, again, if you find the information useful and you're not in Houston, again, you're always welcome to use what we have. And so today we have some really, really great guests. Today will be a different little format than what you've been used to if you haven't been here before, or if you have been here before. So it's going to be me going to give a quick intro, and then we're going to allow our guests to provide slides on the information. It's a lot of good, useful information. So please, listen, watch throughout, and we will have questions at the end after the presentation. If you have any questions as a viewer, please post them in the Facebook comments below, and my colleague Angela Carranza will screen them and get them to me, and we'll be able to ask those at the end. But again, just know your questions will be saved for the end after the presentation. And so TALA, which stands for Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts, they were formed in 1979, and they've been able to meet the legal and accounting needs of artists and art nonprofits. Their services include lawyer and accountant pro bono assistance for artists, patent pro bono assistance for inventors, dispute resolution services, and educational programs for the artistic and business communities. They do amazing work. They do great work. Fresh Arts has worked with them before, and we've loved working with them. And so today is a real treat. And so, as I introduce the following people who are part of TALA, we have the honor of having Alissa McCain, Kathy Ploch, and Alyce Zawacki. And so, again, TALA, Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts. You can visit their website at talarts.org. And Alissa, please take it away.
Sure. Thanks so much, Reyes and Angela, for having us today. We're so fortunate to have this platform, not just to help Houston, but everyone. You guys and Houston Arts Alliance have been doing a lot in Houston, and we can learn some of that, I think, in Austin, because we think we need to band together a little more. But I noticed that your resources are you're collaborating on resources, which is great. So again, thanks for having us. What we've done today is put together a few things to talk about that are the most requested things that we have. So as we talk about these things, you may have other issues, and TALA could possibly help you with that, and we can talk about that at the end of the presentation. But we've put together 4 or 5 things that are the most common questions we've gotten over the past month to 6 weeks. So Alyce is going to start us off on contracts, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about unemployment, and then Kathy's going to take over on the SBA loans and the economic benefit payment. So I'm going to let Alyce Zawacki, Austin attorney, start us off on some contract tips.
Awesome. Thanks, Alissa, and thanks for having us. I'll get those slides up, and then I can start talking about some contract issues. So I'm pretty much just going to go over a lot of the common questions that are being asked at the moment concerning contracts, whether they can be terminated or whether somebody can force a client to continue paying for services if they can continue during this time. So when we're looking at contracts, it is largely going to depend on how your particular contract was drafted and what is in that contract. But the main clauses to kind of look out for are non-refundable deposit clauses, cancellation and termination clauses, and then force majeure clauses. Next slide. So if you have a contract, that's great. And it's always best to have your contracts in writing. The first thing to do is to kind of read over the contract, see what exactly is in there. You may not have looked over it in a long time, but you want to kind of answer these following questions. What exactly does the contract say? what is actually being performed under the contract up to this date? Is performance of the contract impossible due to COVID-19, or can the services still continue? Is there a cancellation or termination clause in the contract? Were non-refundable deposits made? And is there a force majeure clause? Next. A force majeure. So you've probably heard this clause name thrown out a lot over the past couple of weeks. I just want to kind of explain exactly what this clause does. So it's usually found towards the end of your contract, along with a lot of other boilerplate language. And what exactly it does, it allows for non-performance of the contract or delay of performance if there's been an unforeseeable event that's going to affect the performance of the contract. And it's going to justify either suspending the performance or it's going to allow for full cancellation of the contract. This is what a typical force majeure clause kind of looks like. They do vary a little bit, but as you can see here, neither party will be considered in breach of this agreement if either party's performance of this contract is delayed or prevented by a force majeure event. A force majeure event is an event or series of related events that is outside the reasonable control of the party affected, including but not limited to acts of God, power failures, disasters, fires, floods, riots, trade strikes, terrorist attacks, and wars. The affected party shall give reasonable notice upon becoming aware of an event that may affect this agreement. So a lot of these clauses are kind of worded a little bit differently, but typically they will have a list of what is in the contract there, and it's going to, whether this pandemic is going to fall into one of those excuses is really going to depend on what's in there. So at the moment, there is a lot of debate about whether an epidemic or pandemic falls into an act of God. Some contracts do specifically state act of God, but do state academic or pandemic, but a lot of them don't. So there is going to be debate about that. The other thing to consider in these contracts is, when did the force majeure event occur, right? Are we looking at the first case in China? Are we looking at the first case in the US? Are we looking at when the WHO declared it as a pandemic? Or are we looking at when the city in which you run your business actually shut down business? And so another thing to think about is the shutting down of business mandatory? You know, here in Austin, for some businesses it is, for some businesses it isn't. So this force majeure clause may not come into effect if the services can continue. So what happens if the force majeure clause is not applicable? And I can get the next slide up. Perfect. So you can look elsewhere within your contract. If your force majeure clause is too narrow or there isn't a force majeure clause at all, you can look to these common law principles. So there is the doctrine of impossibility and the doctrine of impracticability. The first one has to do with where performance cannot physically occur due to the outside circumstances. And the second one has to do with performance can occur, but it's just going to be extremely burdensome on the parties, and it's not going to be practical to be able to perform. In both of those circumstances, these doctrines can come into effect in lieu of a force majeure clause and can allow for non-performance of the contract. So I've had a lot of this, I've had this question brought to me quite a lot over the past few weeks. I have a number of clients whose services aren't actually affected by COVID-19, for example, marketing services. And so they can still perform their services, but they end up having a client who, because of other financial constraints due to COVID-19, they're trying to get out of their contract and terminate the services. And so what we're kind of looking at here, it's not so much going to be the force majeure clause, it's going to be these cancellation and termination clauses within the contract. Another thing to look out for is if you are the one who's trying to get out of a contract where it hasn't been affected by COVID-19, there may be a kill fee clause. And so these clauses impose a penalty on the party cancelling. Generally, it's a monetary penalty, say 20% of the remaining payment obligation. So that may be something that you as a service person are able to enforce against a client, and something to be aware of if you are the customer of a contract that has one of these clauses within it. Next slide. What if you don't have a contract? You still have some options, right? You should go back and look at what evidence was agreed on and see if anything was mentioned about cancellation, refunds, or termination. The common law doctrines that I just talked about of impossibility and impracticability can still apply to oral agreements. So even if there wasn't a formal contract, if the services have become completely unable to be rendered, these doctrines may still apply to you. Next slide. Does a deposit have to be returned? This is such a big question at the moment, and I've had it from both ends. I've had it from clients who maybe are subject to a service agreement or clients that are offering services. And so the very lawyer answer is maybe, and it again depends on the contract wording. So invoking a force majeure clause generally cancels performance completely, but it may not necessarily cancel payment obligations. And so if the contract clearly states that the deposit was non-refundable, or the force majeure clause specifically states that payment obligations are excluded, then the deposit may not have to be returned. Another thing to think about is if the event is actually months away and it's not clear whether the event is going to be affected by COVID-19 or not, then you should probably just wait to see whether they're going to be affected before canceling the actual contract. What the biggest takeaway from all of this is that you should really have clear deposit, clear cancellation terms in your contract. And this may be a good time to kind of look over your contracts, go back to them and maybe play around with some of these clauses that are in them. Next slide. Other things to consider, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. If you have a legal basis as a service provider to keep a deposit or to enforce a kill fee, you should also consider the impact of doing so that it will have on your business reputation and whether it's worth the time and effort in potentially going after a client. In saying that, obviously, if you're a small business, your livelihood and financial security matter too. If you can't be too flexible, then don't. But there are some other options that you may have, such as postponing services instead of cancelling, offering payment plans, enforcing non-refundable deposits, then dropping the kill fee clause, or giving a credit for future services or goods. The other thing is when you're negotiating with a client at the moment, make sure you have everything in writing so that there's a clear track of what was agreed on. You can also check your insurance policy for relief in these situations. Some policies do cover cancellation of events or business interruption. I'm not seeing many of these insurance policies actually, coming to help in this situation, but it is worth going back and having a look. Thank you, and I'll pass it over to Alissa.
Thanks, Alyce. That's some great stuff there. I think one of the things you said is everyone's looking at their contracts now to make sure that these clauses are in there and that it's protecting both sides. So that is something that TALA can help with. So if you have that on your mind and as you start to work again or change the way that you work, you might remember to give us a call. We could probably help you look at that. So just a plug for TALA. So I'm going to go on and talk about unemployment, which is in the news every day now. So I'm going to tell you what I know so far. As most people know, the TWC has been swamped with applicants. So they're trying to catch up, which is not so good for some people, but they do seem to be making policies now that will help you out. Even if your payment is late, you should still get it, and they're actually going to start backdating. So if you haven't applied for unemployment yet, or you haven't been able to get through on the online or on the telephone, you shouldn't have to worry about getting paid. Eventually, you should get paid. They are going to backdate claims. So just make sure that you have record of the last day that you got paid or when your pay was drastically reduced, and they should be able to give you pay for those weeks. So could I go to the first slide, please? So basically, this presentation, it could be a lot longer than the 5 or so minutes I'd like to spend on this. However, today I'm just going to cover mainly the pandemic unemployment assistance, which is what most sole proprietors or self-employed people or independent contractors that get 1099s would be eligible for, and that's what they're looking for at the moment. To get this help under an unemployment system, you have to apply for traditional unemployment first. So and it's not going to be geared to you in the application because it's mostly for people that get a W-2 and have an employer that pays them on a regular basis. Just yesterday, after I gave these slides, Kathy let me know that there was an announcement from the TWC giving some help with that application. So if you haven't applied yet, it's in the news bulletins section and it's under press releases, and that's the easiest way for me to find it. The TWC website is kind of hard to navigate in my opinion, but if you go to news and then you go to press releases, it's the first one and it came out yesterday. And they're telling people that are self-employed basically to select reduced hours and why their job separation occurred, and then to select COVID-19 under the disaster impact section. So again, that select reduced hours of why you're applying and COVID-19 under the disaster section. And that should get you to the pandemic unemployment application that you'll need to go through. Before they do anything, they're going to try to qualify you for regular unemployment. Some of you may or may not qualify. If you've had a W-2 job in the last year, you have to go through that process and actually get a denial before they're going to look at the pandemic unemployment insurance. So basically, you're going through the system just the same as everyone else, and don't panic when they send you a denial. If they do send you a denial, they will automatically put you in the stack to be looked at for this pandemic uninsurance. They also have asked that if you've applied once, please don't apply again and again and again, as it just makes it harder for the folks at TWC. Can I get to the second slide, please? So what can I get? So this has been the question. This has just gotten clarified over the last basically a week to week and a half, actually. Everyone right now, no matter which unemployment you're getting, whether it's the pandemic disaster unemployment or the regular unemployment, is eligible at this time to receive an extra $600 a week. That $600 would be on your check for weeks between April 5th and July 31st. If you provide proof of earnings, that's what they're going to use to calculate your benefit. If you are a W-2, it's a little easier because that's been reported to the IRS as an employee. If you're not a W-2 and you're a sole proprietor, right now they're not requiring proof of earnings to get a minimum amount, and that minimum amount is $207 per week. However, I will say eventually you are going to have to turn over your 2019 tax return, and they are going to have to look at it and prove that you were in business and that you were trying to make money and that you did qualify for this. So yes, you can get it without the documentation right now. However, you will need the documentation and you will need to send that in. I'll also tell you that you should probably do this sooner than later, because a lot of other benefits that could be coming to you would require your 2019 tax return, because that would be the preferred method of getting money for most loans and other government type programs. So if I were you and you didn't have it and you take the 207, you should get that ready as soon as possible. If you do have it, you should send it in, because it's possible you may qualify for more than the $207 a week. So what makes a minimum amount that you would be eligible for would be $807 a week until July 31st. So if you are a sole proprietor, a 1099 person, self-employed, go ahead and apply and get in the system, and hopefully it won't take too long. I do know we've been working with some clients, and I know this week 2 people have been awarded this and they are starting to get it. So I know it's out there, but it's just taking a while for the self-employed people to get through the system because they have to be denied first. You can receive these benefits for up to 39 weeks, but again, the $600 only goes through July 31st. And the last slide, please, for me. What you need to provide. You need to provide your wages basically for the most recently completed tax year. Again, that's the 2019 1040 for most people. So I really highly suggest that you start working on that and get that ready. One of the things I want to say also is that unemployment benefits are taxable income. So just so you know, there is an option to take out taxes when you receive the benefits. I believe it's a straight deduction of 10%, and that's, you either have 10% taken out for taxes or 0. That is your decision. But if you do not have taxes taken out, be prepared to owe taxes on that next year in April, or whenever you as a self-employed person pay your taxes on a quarterly basis. I think that's all I have for now. And so I'm going to turn it over to Houston CPA Kathy Ploch, who is going to talk about the small business programs.
Thank you very much. Boy, I wish I could have some better news and saying there's a lot of money out there for these two loans, but unfortunately there isn't. But we're still going to talk about them anyway. The first one, if you could put the first slide up. And these are the two loans that have been available. It's the PPP and versus the EIDL. That's how they are saying that. The first one, and this is kind of a quick comparison, but the first one I'll go through is the PPP, or the Paycheck Protection Loan. And this was one that everybody had been starting to apply for. This is one that you receive actually from your bank. So it was best to have a business account, because what we found out as this was being processed a couple of weeks ago, that the banks were utilizing the people that had a business bank account first, as instead of people that had just a personal bank account. But it's really designed, the PPP loan is really designed for businesses that have employees, but it will be available, or it had been available for self-employed people. It's supposed to be used for payroll costs, mainly the salaries and the health insurance. The maximum amount of the loan that you could get was 2.5 times your average total monthly payroll cost. And for those of you who are either a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, what you would do is, since you're not actually paying people, what you would do is you would use the net earnings from your self-employment. And what we're kind of talking about is that Schedule C that you file on your tax return, and that is your bottom line. So you're taking your income less all of your expenses. The loan interest is very low. As you can see on the slide, it's 1% interest rate, and you must pay it back within a 2-year period unless the loan is forgiven. And the loan amount can be forgiven as long as you use those for the qualified expenses. And what that means is that 75% of those funds that you receive must be used for payroll costs, and the remaining 25% must be used for rent or utilities, or if you happen to have loan interest, during an 8-week period following the loan origination date. So that's the PPP loan. The EIDL loan, that's been out for a while. That's the economic injury disaster loan. And I'm sure many of you that are here in the Houston area might have actually gotten this loan at some point when we had Hurricane Harvey. It is a loan, once again, it's a loan to pay payroll and other operating expenses. And you can actually have both of these loans at the same time, except that you can't use the money for the same expenses. The applicants can get up to $10,000 in emergency grants that does not need to be repaid. When that first came out, I guess 3 weeks ago now, everybody thought they were going to get the full $10,000, but what it ended up happening was that it was clarified, and it was only for $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees. So that's where you would get where they got the $10,000 from. This loan is through the SBA itself, and the SBA will be the one that will determine how much you were actually going to receive based on the actual economic injury and your company's financial needs. The lack of profitability and or loss of sales by itself doesn't necessarily prove substantial economic injury. You must be able to meet your obligations and to pay the ordinary, and then that you can't pay the ordinary and necessary operating expenses. And so the SBA offers these loans with a very long-term repayment plan. Maximum is 30 years. I'm sure they wouldn't have that. And like I said, you can see on the slide, it's 3.75% for the businesses. And if we have any nonprofit organizations on, it's 2.75%. And so the question had been, can we take both loans? I would say yes, but as of today, there is no money for either. The PPP loan went away earlier in the week, and I just went on the SBA's website this morning for the EIDL loan, and there's no money there either at this time. And the SBA is not accepting any new applications for the EIDL loan. At one point, I would have said the PPP may not be the best loan because of it being the main purpose for employees. One of the early questions that had been asked was, well, what, as a sole proprietor, what if I pay contractors, independent contractors, 1099 people? Are they considered employees? And they are not. Those people that get 1099s that you may be paying them, they in turn would file for their own loan application. I do know that as of today, I think the Senate has passed a new bill, and to appropriate money, the House is supposed to hopefully agree and pass it today. Don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll just have to stand by and see. So as far as record keeping, what records should I keep for these loans? And I think now more than anything is important to keep good records. Whether some of you have actually come to my class in February, I usually do a Taxes for Artists class in conjunction with TALA and Fresh Arts. And I'm kind of reminded with all of this happening now, how important good record keeping and some of the things that I have always brought up in my presentation, how important it is now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of break this down into two sections. Is what if I already have received the money, now what? And then what if I haven't received the money, now what? So if you've already received the money, if you've been very, very fortunate to have already received the money, documentation is very, very important, especially when it comes, if you've got any money from the SBA. It's very important because you are going to have to eventually account for all of this. And with the with the EIDL loan, if you don't use more, with the PPP, if you don't use the 25% for non-payroll cost, then it's not going to, you're going to get in trouble, and it's not going to be forgiven. And that's kind of what you want to do. You're going to be required to send in, utility bills, the invoices that you pay, credit card statements, those kind of things, debit card receipts, probably your bank statement too, I would think. If you didn't put your money that you received in a different bank account, that's okay. It might be, if you are maybe getting that in the next day or two, I would suggest, if you can, to open up a separate bank account to keep all this in, so it'll help you keep it straight. You don't want to try and mix everything. If you are already using the QuickBooks software, with the nonprofit organizations, we use classes a lot of times to, that's the term in QuickBooks, where they use the classes as a program and keep track of their different programs. Well, this could be used in the same manner. Set up, if you've got both, set up a PPP one and set up an EIDL one, and then that way it can kind of help you in your record keeping to keep track of that. If you don't have that, get a folder, go down to Office Depot or whatever, get a folder and put all of your receipts in for that, and that way at least you have them all in one spot. Another thing that you can do is, so those are some of the things if you've already received the money. If you haven't received the money, then, you know, if the House does approve and the President does sign this new bill that they've got going, it's going to be like the other one, like it was first for these. It's going to be on a first come, first served basis. So you need to be poised and ready to go. One of the things that I had always talked about, and I was laughing, telling them earlier, I said, I've always been telling everybody, get a separate bank account. I didn't realize until now that I need to clarify that and tell them you need to get a separate business bank account. So I'm going to do that in my upcoming classes. If you don't have any software, bookkeeping type software, because, you know, it's not necessarily required. It's promoted to be, that's what you really need to do because you are a business, even if you are self-employed. But I went on to, you know, QuickBooks is really the most widely used and kind of my preference. I've been using it since 1995. But if you don't have any, now's the time to get it. I went on QuickBooks Online's or QuickBooks, their website right now, and they have a QuickBooks Online for self-employeds, and I know many of you maybe actually have that, but if you don't, right now, it is $1 per month for 12 months. Guys, that is super, super cheap. Even in the past, it's been $5 or $10 a month. $1 a month now, so get it. Or else you can use the other QuickBook Online for Essentials, which is $12 a month. And then the Plus version is $21 a month. And what's great about it, you can attach these receipts. You can scan them in, attach them to your entries, expense entries in there, and you've got it all in one nice little spot. It's great. You can, of course, also use the desktop version if you prefer that. And any nonprofit organizations that might happen to be on here today, if you don't have QuickBooks for nonprofits, then I will also once again recommend that you use the go on to TechSoup.org, and you can get the desktop version for $150 for a 3-user license, and $75 if you want to use the QuickBooks Online. Once you have your books set up, make sure that your balance sheet is accurate because the SBA is going to be looking, like I said, you've got to prove that you are, you know, that you need this money financially, and they're going to be looking at some of what they call KPIs, which are key performance indicators. I'm not going to talk about this because, you know, if we have time, maybe, or we can do this some other time. But if there is another avenue that businesses can use, and this actually is what they call the qualified sick leave and qualified family medical leave, which came out with the Families First Corona Response Act. That was signed back in March 18th. And that was mainly used for employers to get credits on wages paid, but it can definitely be used as a self-employed, and a person can also utilize it. And there's on the IRS website, there is some what they call FAQs, or frequently asked questions, that talk about that and how you can do it. And above all, reach out to the professionals to help you. TALA is a great resource. And so then I wanted to quickly talk about the economic payments. These are what everybody's talking about, the $1,200 and the $2,400 if you're married, filing joint. To be eligible, you must be a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. You must have a valid Social Security number, and you can't be claimed as a dependent on another tax return, like such as your parents. You would get $1,200 for individuals as long as your AGI, which is adjusted gross income, is up to $75,000, and $2,400 if you're married filing joint with an AGI of $150,000. And then there's $500 for each qualifying child that you have claimed on your return. The Treasury has already sent out the first wave of payments about a couple of weeks ago. And this amount is based on either your 2018 or 2019 tax return. And hopefully, if you did that and you had a refund and you put your bank information on there, it should be fine. The second question, everybody says, well, do I have to pay this money back? The answer is no. That's always good. And what if I haven't received my check? If you go to the IRS website and if you go to the next slide, that's a screenshot of the homepage of the irs.gov website. And you can see there that there's two sections at the very top. The one of them is the non-filers, and the other one is to get my payment. The non-filers were kind of like this group of people that weren't required to file a return. So if you were single, if you had made less than $12,200, and so I'm not going to go into the detail on that. And then if anybody was just only got Social Security, they were going into the Social Security system to get that. If you want to check on your payment, then you've got that Get My Payment section on there where you could go in and check. You put just basic information in, and that will tell you. Now, there's been a lot of issues about that, and I'm not going to get into it, but there are a lot of, as we say, FAQs on there. The only other thing, a couple of things I just didn't want to mention is that if you owe back taxes by any chance, or if you happen to be in an installment agreement or you owed money on student debt, you will still get this money. They will not take that. The only time they'll take it from you is if you were still eligible, is if you had back child support. They will take it for that. So, and the only other thing I want to just mention about maybe why you might not have gotten last Thursday, the Washington Post had an article about some people that were using some of these, had filed their taxes through some of these major companies. And if you were one of those people where they took out their fee from your refund, then there's been a problem with that. And so I would just say, please don't do that. CPAs don't ever do this. So, and then the last two things on the slide prior to that, watch out for an IRS letter. Once Treasury has sent the money out, and then within 15 days, you should get a letter from the IRS stating that you have received, that they have sent the money out and how it was sent. And if for some reason you didn't get it, then there will be instructions on there of what to do next. And then avoid scams. I mean, we've already had issues over the past several years about these identity thefts and things like that. And just always remember, these scammers once again are out in full force. Please don't fall for them. They will use emails, they'll phone call you, they'll text you relating to a payment. And remember that the IRS will not ever send unsolicited communications electronically, and or asking people to open attachments and things like that. So once again, the best resource with respect to tax information like this is on the irs.gov website. And I will turn it back to Rez.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was muted, y'all. Thank you. No, I didn't want to interrupt the amazing information y'all were providing. Thank you so much. I have two viewer questions that I'm going to go ahead and ask. I'm going to direct them at whoever I feel the information is pertinent, who could answer it. But again, if any of you could answer it, that's totally cool. Alyce, this seems to be for you. So this viewer's event had to be canceled due to the current COVID-19 situation and had their contract with the hotel. The hotel emailed them and said that there will be no cancellation fee if they have it by spring 2021, which I assume to be the event. They're asking them to sign a new contract by June to avoid a cancellation fee, which will be in the thousands. They have no idea what the economy will look like, nor if they will be in a place where they can have the event. What advice can you give them? And they do not want to sign the new contract in June.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, have an attorney look over that contract, because you don't want to be signing anything right now that's going to make you have to pay something in the future when everything's so unclear. Yeah, without really reading the terms of the contract, it's hard to give specific advice on that. But I would just, as you kind of, I think the person who asked the question is already weary of that, of signing. And that's because we don't know what the rest of the year is going to look like. So, yeah.
Yeah. Kathy, we have a question for you. Has there been any more specific guidance on the PPP forgiveness process?
I haven't seen anything yet. The problem is everything is liquid in as far as day to day. They may not have something today, but they may have it tomorrow. They may have it right after we get off of this. That's the problem. I didn't bring up, and I will now, right before we went on this live, QuickBooks. I got an email from QuickBooks, and anybody that, it says here that they've created an easy method to complete an application for the Paycheck Protection Program loan within QuickBooks Capital, which is now available to a subset of customers, including multi-owner businesses, using the following products. So if you already are on either the desktop QuickBooks, self-employed QuickBooks, or online payroll, then and on the self-employed, it says users who had filed their 2019 return with TurboTax self-employed, they are going to go ahead and accept applications, so that as soon as there's more money, then you will be in the queue, if you will, to get that. So I don't have anything, and I know at the end there is a slide with our contact information. So you're more than welcome to shoot me an email and reach out. And there's my email address and my phone number. And if something comes up, which it could later.
All right. That's it for viewer questions. Maybe if y'all could take maybe one or two questions for me personally. So one thing is, perhaps this is one for Alissa or Kathy. So in regards to a lot of these unemployment funds or government assistance, do you know of any way, or if people who take these should be weary of kind of any future impact that could have, let's say, when they apply for a loan, or any other things in the future where they'll have like a gap where it says, you had an unemployment or anything like that?
Do you want to answer, Kathy? Or you?
Okay. No, go ahead.
So, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing right now. So I hope you can hear me. For unemployment, I don't really think that there's an issue with that, as long as it's not a fraudulent claim. If you truly lost your job through no fault of your own, which people are going to know COVID-19 is no fault of an individual applying for unemployment. So I do think that there's very small risk in filing an unemployment claim at this time. I mean, that's what it's for. So I would say definitely, if you need the money, to go ahead and do that. As far as the loans, I think it, from my opinion, I can let Kathy speak on this too, as with any loan, you do want to follow the rules and repay it, because as long as you do what the SBA requires you to do, then that's good. They're extending you credit. You're going to take it. It's either going to be forgiven or you're going to pay it back. I don't see a negative as long as you are doing what you need to do to follow the rules. That's why it's really important that you understand when you get your loan information from the bank and you get the actual contract, that you understand what your obligations are. Kathy, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but those people that, when this started, 3 weeks ago now, I'm kind of looking at my calendar, about 3 weeks ago, everybody was, I'm going to apply for everything. And, there is, as far as the EIDL loan and the PPP loan, like I mentioned, you can't use that money for the same thing. So there's got to be a coordinated effort, and it can be done. But it's very important that, you keep good records because from what I'm understanding, at least from, I don't know about the banks, but I know from SBA, you can get into some serious problems if you don't, do some of the things that you're supposed to do. And also, especially with good record keeping. And, I know with the nonprofits when this first started, that's something, nonprofits in the general sense have never wanted to do loans, and a lot of these were never even available for nonprofit organizations. So I know that they were very concerned about it, and a lot of people, with respect to the amount of money that would be forgiven, they want to make sure that loan is forgiven. And so that's why good record keeping is so important. Because otherwise, then, it's going to be something where you won't be able to, you'll have to pay that back. And, thank goodness it is. I mean, if you have to pay it back, that's what, it is what it is, but it is a very low interest rate. And we've never seen anything like that. And, who knows if Congress comes up with this next, I haven't seen the details or whatever, with the loans. I know that a lot of people were very upset, because it went out, it came, the PPP amount was used up so quickly. And, they're talking about small business, but I don't know, my interpretation of small business was not their interpretation. I mean, when you think about it, was, supposed to be for 500, under 500 employees, hey, I think we need small business being more like, maybe less than 50 employees. So I do hope that, the larger businesses aren't going to use up all this money, because it's really small businesses that need it more than anything.
Awesome, thank you. I have tons of other questions, but with time limitations, some things that maybe just ideas that maybe artists can think about, that maybe ask TALA whenever you have time, or what have you, whether it be protecting intellectual property as you transition to a digital platform, putting your stuff online. Other things would be like, how do you write off things that are transitions to digital platforms, like subscriptions, or buying equipment to film your art craft to be seen. Those, again, are questions that we wish I had time to ask, but again, y'all did such an amazing job that I'm sure that those can be taken offline or what have you. But Alissa, could you please maybe talk about other things that TALA will be doing in the future that people can tune into and ask before we say our goodbyes?
Sure. Could you put the contact slide back up just for a few minutes, please? Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that these are two of the outstanding professionals that would be talking to you possibly if you did call TALA. We have around 400 attorneys throughout Texas that have agreed to help artists pro bono, which means for free. Typically, most of our requests are contract related, intellectual property related, your copyright, your trademarks, and just business contracts, LLC formations. Because of this crisis, we've had to shift. So now we're answering a lot of questions about loans and government programs. We are scrambling to keep up. We're just like everyone else. We're having to read stuff every day. I will say that the two ladies joining us today are a group of about 20 people that around a month ago committed to try to keep up as best as possible with all these programs. And they've also agreed to talk to people one-on-one about these programs to the best of our knowledge. So if you do have a particular situation or have a question about one of the SBA programs or unemployment, you can sign up for a free consultation with one of the 20 attorneys and CPAs that are trying to keep up with it in that pool. Or if you have another question related to coronavirus, COVID-19, you're just like the question that we got about the contract, that's definitely something we could take a look at. So I asked you to go to our website, TALARTS.org, and you'll see a slider for it, and it takes you to the COVID-19 page. All of our consultations regarding COVID-19 are complimentary or free. Typically, we charge $75 for an individual. We are waiving that if it's related to COVID-19. So if you do have a question about a contract, possibly a landlord question, or we've had numerous groups that have wanted to renegotiate a rent contract with their landlord, and we have helped them. We didn't really talk about that today, but I would say your best point of defense, if you can, is try to talk to your landlord and see what they may be amenable to doing for you during this time. I know a lot of the cities and the state have waived evictions, and people seem to be excited about that. It does mean that you're not going to have to leave your home today, but it does mean most likely you're eventually going to have to pay, or you will have to leave your home. So I do encourage you not to just idly sit by and wait for that date, to do try to work something out with your landlord. But if you have any other questions or would like to talk to someone, definitely I would be glad to answer your questions. Check out our website. Also, if you're at home and you're not doing anything and you have the time and you want to update your copyrights, trademarks, just your contracts for the future, things like that, we are continuing to service our members during this time, and that is unlimited questions, whether COVID related or not, for only $75 a year. So please, if we can help you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We serve artists all over Texas. You don't have to be in Houston or Austin. You can be anywhere in the state.
Thank you so much. That's an amazing deal, $75. I mean, you can't really beat that. And so that only again shows the commitment, the amazing work that y'all are doing. Alissa McCain, Kathy Ploch, Alyce Zawacki, thank you so much. Thank you for the work you're doing. I hope you get rest sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
us.
Thank you. So that was great. Thank you so much. So please stay tuned in right now. We're going to have an update from Houston Arts Alliance from their disaster department. As this video is co-sponsored by Houston Arts Alliance. And so they're going to have some updates. We're going to have someone from the disaster department call in to provide any updates or any new information that you should know about. In the meantime, while we're getting them connected, just so you know, for as far as evictions in Harris County and Houston, they can be filed by landlords for non-payment, but the hearings will be suspended until April 30th. So the end of this month. Perhaps there will be another announcement, and writs of possession may not be served until after May 7th. So that a writ of possession is a document issued by the court after the landlord wins an unlawful detainer eviction lawsuit. So those won't be issued until after May 7th, and essentially all of the court matters are delayed or suspended as of right now. But again, stay tuned. Yesterday, Lena Hidalgo announced a mandatory mask order for Harris County and that will take effect, I believe, Monday. If you don't have a mask, if you don't have access to one, we actually, Fresh Arts actually posted Fresh Arts actually on their social media posted that there are several artists giving masks, or selling masks, really great masks that you can, they're either affordable or free. So again, definitely check that out. And so unfortunately, Lauren Hainley of Houston Arts Alliance cannot make it to this call. However, their update I do have in hand. Their update is that the relief fund, let me pull that information real quick up. But the relief fund.
I can make it.
Oh, wow. Like a miracle. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Again, everyone, again, welcome back to the Facebook Live is Lauren Hainley. So please take it away.
Sure, yeah. So we at HAA have a lot of cool stuff going on for you. The biggest thing, and the thing that Reyes was just talking about, is that we were able to, the Houston Endowment graciously gave us a grant of $100,000 toward the Artist Relief Fund, which means that we were able to meet our first goal toward that fund. But within about a month since we announced the application, we have received over 300 applications, which means that the need is far greater than what we have. So we have decided to increase the goal for our GoFundMe, and we're going to try for $250,000. We're at about $180,000 the last time I looked, which was honestly yesterday. So I don't know if that's increased. But we're really excited. And so if you or someone you know might be interested in donating, we would encourage you to share that information so that we can help as many people as we can. The other thing is that we are tomorrow in our weekly 10 a.m. Friday email releasing 3 flowcharts that we worked on in partnership with Engage from the Mid-America Arts Alliance. And they're really cool flowcharts that are going to help you sort of navigate all the different options there are and make sure that you're accessing all the different things that have happened to help you. So like there's three, but one for individuals, one for organizations. And one for individuals sort of starts with like, apply for grants. And then it gets more specific. It's like, are you a union member? If so, do this. Do you have a student loan? Here's some more information. Do you have a mortgage? And it breaks down the CARES Act and a bunch of other stuff that's happened to make sure that you know what resources are available to you. So those will be available tomorrow, and we're really excited about them. The third one is about how you can help, so how you can give back. I know in times like this, there's a lot of people who are bored in their homes or want to help other people but don't know how. So we put together a couple of options for you. And the thing about that one is I want you, if you have other ideas or other ways that people can give back, I want you to let me know. There's a support desk on the ready.haatx COVID website. And I want you to click on it and share any other ideas or places where people can give back so that we can help the community in all the ways that are possible. We also I was doing it during the live earlier, like 10 minutes ago, just uploaded an FAQ with information from the National Endowment for the Humanities, who just came out with their funding opportunity as it relates to the CARES Act. So we got some really cool stuff on there. We encourage you to check it out. We're updating our unemployment FAQ. I know you guys talked about that earlier in the session, and we're updating that for the new guidance, and that should be up in the next couple of hours. So HA's got a lot of really cool stuff going on, and we hope that you're using them. And there's my cat.
Cats got to eat too. So again, thank you so much, Lauren. Really great update from HAA. Thank you for the work you're doing. Again, I hope you're getting some good rest, and I hope everything's well with you.
Well, thanks, Rez. You guys are doing great work too.
Appreciate it. All right. So see you later. See you next time. But again, thank you for tuning in. Just some updates for your information tomorrow. After today, you have more questions. Again, feel free to go to TALA, their website, which is talarts.org. If you have other questions that maybe you need fairly soon, tomorrow, the Texas Gulf Coast Network and University of Houston Bauer Houston Center, their SBDC, their Small Business Development Center, they're having a free webinar at 9:30 a.m. I will be sure to post that on the resource page and in the comments below. They are having a CARES Act 2020 tax implications free webinar. Well, they'll be covering some issues that maybe were brought up today but not fully delved into just for lack of time. But again, I'm sure TALA is more than happy to take questions. But the thing that I just mentioned by the SBDC, I will post down below or on the resource page. Please stay tuned with Fresh Arts. Please follow us on all social media. We post really great things every day. We have newsletters that you should definitely be tuning into. If you have any concerns, if you have any tips, if you have any information, visit our website, fresharts.org, and fill out our subscribe to our newsletters. We have one goes out to every Tuesday. We have a resource newsletter that goes out every first Thursday. And other stuff. There's that form that you can fill out to let us know of any tips, stories, topics, events. If you have any events that are happening online, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to share that, to blast that on our channels. Just want to thank everyone involved with today. Thank you to Angela Carranza, my colleague, who is screening your questions and is doing a lot of the great background work. Want to thank Houston Arts Alliance, who co-sponsored this video to be able to provide this great information to you. There they are. Thank you to them. Thank you to Lauren. And I also really want to thank Ben Doyle of Ben Productions, who is making this look all nice and smooth and made possible today's presentations to be seamless. Thank you so much, Ben. And again, thank you. Tune in this coming Tuesday. Will be a Reyes Resource Roundup where I'll be sharing resources or updates that I found in the field or that are coming up, whether it be deadlines, funds, government assistance updates, what have you. Please tune in then every Tuesday at noon. Soon we'll be transitioning to a more workshop information-based format to kind of test that out. We've been doing discussions, but we're probably going to be transitioning more to a workshop format. So again, if you want more hands-on or more information regarding how to do certain things, please stay tuned, or direct others who you think would like this information or could take a lot from it. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.